I'm Herb. I'm an alcoholic. God, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for your support of the Roundup, certainly, and of this workshop. It's a new workshop for me. I've been focused on this topic all year long. I'm not sure it complements the topic of the Roundup. Normally I do that. The Roundup was started 39 years ago, you may or may not know that, by Dave Barge and a group of people. Dave passed in the last month. And I missed the first one, 1984, as I was just getting sober. I couldn't find my with both hands. No, I mean, I didn't know, and I didn't know that I didn't know about anything. But after I had a year of sobriety and I learned a little bit about our culture and what goes on, I haven't missed one of these since then. And Dave was very kind to me. About 25 years ago, invited me to do a variety of workshops at the Roundup, and then about 10, 12 years ago, gave me the slot on Saturday morning, and I've had it ever since for this time. So I'm very, very indebted to Dave for that respect and that opportunity, and I hope that today you will be challenged, and you will be comforted, you will be informed, and it'll raise some questions. I have a website, I think it's up there, yep. And I also have, thanks to the support people I have a very robust YouTube channel. I didn't know the vocabulary, but I have learned some. And I have 9 or 10 separate playlists. Look at me, I can talk about it. And they're very robust. Some of them are weekly, year-long workshops. Some of them are weekend retreats and topics and a variety of things that I think will support and nurture your own recovery. All with PowerPoint presentation. So today, I want to talk about what are the best kept secrets in the 12-step rooms. It's kind of an intriguing title, at least from, I hope it is, for you. It looks like it is from the attendance. And so, what are the secrets? What does unmanageability mean? I have been sober since February of 1984. Yeah, 39 years. I want to say 40 so badly, but it's not true. So rigorous honesty. And I got a sponsor right away, and he had me go to a meeting every day and call him every day and get a big book and read it and work the steps. It was a wonderful, wonderful sponsor. I had it for 28 years until he retired and moved out of town. I believe in local sponsorship. So I got a new sponsor 12 years ago, or whatever the math is, 11. And the problem with that sponsor relationship is he didn't know much about the big book or the step process. So he didn't guide me through the big book or the steps. I had to engage a man to do that. I called him a project manager. I called him a step guide. It's not vocabulary in the big book or common vocabulary in the AA culture or the 12-step culture, but it's my vocabulary to describe my experience. And I had 4 different step guides over a 20-year period going through this work, steps 1 through 12 out of the big book precisely. And each time I went through, I had a broader and deeper experience. I was 10 years sober before I really understood and then experienced unmanageability. There won't be a lot of time for some dialogue. Perhaps there will be, and I'll pause and let you know that. I'll stay after I finish. It'll be 2 hours for sure, a solid 2 hours. I'm committed to Dave on that. But I will stay afterwards, unrecorded, to have dialogue with anybody who wants to stay and have dialogue. And when you're done, I'll be done. Ask yourself the questions. What I found in that journey over 20 years with 4 different mechanics of the big book, 4 different mechanics with the steps. Yep. They never became my sponsor. They never became my friend. They were project managers. I had a beginning and an end to the project. The project was to work the steps 1 through 12. Sometimes it took a year, sometimes it took 2. One time it took 6 months because I was in a hurry. But it didn't matter because each time I had a broad and deep experience. Unmanageability. Just ask yourself the question, please. Now, I'm going to be talking about it. Giving you my knowledge, my interpretation, my experience. But I want you to set it up in your own heart, in your own consciousness. What do you think? Well, I mean, it's step 1, isn't it? Admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. What does that mean, unmanageable? Secret number 2, neutrality and not cured. What does that mean? Page 84 in the big book. Those are the words from the page. Neutrality is the promise of finishing the first 9 steps. What does that mean? And then it's big caution, yellow flag, not cured. What does that mean, not cured? Of what? Secret number 3, daily reprieve. It's on the same page as not cured. What do we mean, not daily reprieve? Look up the word in the dictionary. Reprieve, stay of execution. That's pretty dramatic. Well, the whole process is pretty dramatic if you take it for the way it's presented to us in the big book. Bill says we're at the fork in the road. You can choose light or you can choose darkness. Those are my current favorite metaphors. I might refer to them throughout our time together today. I don't necessarily refer to God or spirituality. I don't want to create any resistance on anybody's part, so I'm going to neutralize that. I'm going to use the words light and darkness. Secret number 4, our way of life. Notice way is all bold and italics. What does that mean? The Buddhists talk about there are 3 ingredients for anybody who wants to have a spiritual life, and I would say who wants to have a decent human life. There are 3 ingredients. Have a path, have a teacher, have a community. Aren't we lucky? I mean, that was 5,000 years ago that they were quoting this kind of wisdom for the spiritual journey. A path, 12 steps, a teacher, sponsor. We don't use the word teacher, but that's what they really are. Mentor, teacher, accountability partner, companion. A wisdom person, let's hope. If you don't have that, it's the blind leading the blind. Yeah, think about it. And a community. We have our 12-step fellowship. We have the ingredients for having a very, very decent human life. As I look back on my time before AA, I was 43 when I came in. I'm 83 now. I'll save you the math. Before AA, my life was restless, irritable, and discontent, and filled with chaos. After AA, coming in for the first 4 years, my life was restless, irritable, and discontent, and the chaos had been reduced. Did you just hear what I said? In those first 4 years, I was restless, irritable, and discontent because I didn't know that this was a way of life. I thought it was going to meetings and talking to a sponsor and being of service. So I talked to my sponsor every day. I went to a meeting every day, and in those meetings I was of service, and I thought I was a Renaissance man. And eventually, at 4 years of sobriety, I was interviewing a guy to take me through the steps because I heard what he had and I wanted what he had. And he said, "Herb, you're not a Renaissance man, you're a Neanderthal." He said, "You have a lot of information, but you have very little transformation." I hope you get it like I did. It was like startling. We're in a restaurant and he said it out loud. Exactly. You have a lot of academic knowledge that's never been filtered through your heart to your feet, giving you an experience. Knowledge is wonderful, but unless it's connected to action, it has no impact on our personal lives. In fact, he said, knowledge without action is fantasy. Oh, hard ass, right? Exactly. Our way of life. This is a way of life. Well, secret number 5, and this is a play on words. I hope you can appreciate it. It's also a way of living. I heard Chuck C. once say, God is a verb. Cool. Love is a verb. Love is action. God is love. God is action. Love is action. Think about that one. I mean, if you get that one and walk away with that'll nurture you for the next 6 months. Chuck C., new pair of glasses. Yeah, fabulous stuff. Our way of living. Action. Nothing happens until something changes. Some action takes place. All right. So let's get into it. This man who said to me, you're a Neanderthal, he said, the consciousness that created the problem cannot be the consciousness that solves the problem. Here you are. You have lots of information about lots of things, maybe even some about the big book and the step process and recovery, but you have lots of information. You couldn't escape being an adult person without having lots of information. And some of it's true, and some of it's not. But we don't know that we don't know, and we can't see that we don't see. And Chuck C's name of his book is A New Pair of Glasses. That's what this attitude gave me, a new pair of glasses. He said, are you willing to set aside your old ideas and your knowledge and your experience in order to be delivered to new information and new experience? Hear the vocabulary? To be delivered. Bill uses that word in one of his recordings about his mountaintop mystical experience on his 2nd or 3rd day of hospitalization. I think it was his 2nd or 3rd day of hospitalization. He was still detoxing, but he had this mountaintop mystical experience, didn't he? 20 minutes, the room filled with light. He felt that a clean wind blew through him and that he was delivered from his addiction and he was delivered to his destiny, which was to help other people. I mean, these are words from his description of it, both in the big book on page 14, but in some of the other AA literature. I was delivered. My interpretation of that is the grace, of course, a mystery that I can't explain, I can observe. Each one of you can observe it in your own lives. You try to explain it. Steps, sponsorship, service, prayer, meditation, God's grace. Good luck. Whatever your explanation is. But when you get down really honestly to yourself, there's no explanation. I call it spiritual math. In regular math, you know 1 + 1 = 2. That's pretty straightforward. In spiritual math, at least as I'm presenting it, 1 + 1 = 5. Because the outcome of the journey through steps 1 through 12 is disproportionately producing an impact that I couldn't produce by myself. I can't do it by myself. I can't do it except through some mysterious connection with this power other than myself. More about that in a minute. So I'm inviting you to pray a prayer. At first, I was given this prayer at 10 years of sobriety, and the man gave me the prayer, and I wrote it down. But what I wrote down was, God, please help me set aside. Oh gosh, the ego dies hard. Well, no, did you hear it? God help me. I'll take care of setting it aside. Now, I didn't see the implications of that in 3 years. But I was holding the prayer, and I was in meditation on a daily basis, and all of a sudden, the wee small voice said to me, Herb, you're still trying to be in charge. Why don't you rephrase it for direct spiritual intervention? And that's what this prayer is for this presentation. Prayer is not about words. Prayer is about the intention behind the words. My intention is to talk about our way of life. My intention is to talk about our way of living. Those are the two phrases. In simple terms, steps 10, 11, and 12. And every one of you could probably talk about specifically the understanding of and the application of, from the big book, of steps 10, 11, and 12. Maybe today you'll get a broader or deeper or a different and maybe a personal connection to some of this material. Join me, please. If you want to out loud, you can read it from the screen. I think it's not very large, but it's large enough, I think. I'm going to pray it. I pray slow because I pray intentionally. So try to keep it in somewhat of some harmony, or you can pray quietly, or you don't have to pray at all, but hold the intention today, right now, here and now, of having an open mind and an open heart. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, our way of life, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, the 12 steps, our way of living, and especially you. There's Pathetic Herbie. Yeah. February 1984, in the bondage of addiction, and he didn't know, and he couldn't see. Fortunately, my wife was in a recovery program at San Pedro Hospital, because she said what was going on in our house wasn't acceptable. She had tremendous courage to do that. Fortunately, I went there to support her, and it was a family program. And they asked me to stop drinking. February 20th, they asked me. February 21st is my anniversary. I hope you can hear this. I didn't go to AA. I didn't pray. I didn't decide to stop. I was willing to stop for the 90 days that she was in the program of recovery. That was my commitment. But then they asked me to write out my own autobiography of my relationship with alcohol. If you haven't done that, and if in fact you have abstinence in your priority program, but you are suffering in some other area, this is a terrific tool. If you get this tool, today will be worth it. I mean, there's lots more to come, but if you get this tool, your time here will be absolutely worthwhile. They asked me to do an autobiography, not of my general life, but of my relationship to alcohol. If you have a problem with alcohol, or you want to convince yourself that you are really an alcoholic, write out bullet points. When did you start? What did you drink? What happened? And then do the bullet points through your life all the way to the current time. You might have a problem with drugs, regular prescription or street. You might have a problem with food. You might have a problem with technology. You might have a problem with work. You might have a problem with exercise. Lots of addiction opportunities for those of us who are predetermined to be addicts. Predetermined, it's a biological problem. It's very convinced scientifically from a alcohol problem, a problem of the liver, and there's lots of suspicion of the problem of the brain for everybody else. But there I am. February 1984, not knowing that I had an alcohol problem. At the same time, 4 years later, after discovering through the autobiography that I have a drinking problem, and they said go to AA, and I did for 4 years. And I went to a meeting every day, and I talked to a sponsor every day, and I went to step studies and book studies, and I didn't change. Well, no, I didn't, because I didn't know that I needed to change. I didn't know that change was necessary. I didn't know that change was possible, and I didn't know the process of change. That's why I say it. I'm not trying to be cute. I'm trying to be impactful when I say I didn't know that I didn't know. When it was revealed to me that I was an alcoholic, I wasn't shocked that I was an alcoholic. My father was, my wife was, all of her relatives are. I'm surrounded with alcohol. I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that I had never seen it. I had never connected the dots. That was the benefit of the autobiography, is to connect the dots. When I did it on paper, they had me read it out loud, analogous to steps 4 and 5. When you write it out discreetly over weeks or months or maybe even years, don't wait that long, but if you do, you write it out over time. And then when you read it, at least my recommendation is you sit down in a 5th step and you read it all at once. And you read it out loud, and you read it consecutively. And as you read it out loud consecutively, in one sitting, it washes over you, and you see the impact of addiction in your life, and your life on yourself, and your life on other people. At least that's my experience with it. So ask yourself, where is my life not working? How effective are my efforts? Just do it internally. Allow the content, the intention of the question, in the spirit, the milieu of the set-aside attitude, the set-aside prayer. And just listen to your reactions, your brain resisting or acknowledging or exploring, and your feelings of, hell no. Oh, what's he talking about? Oh my God, he's so arrogant. I know you're out there. And I am. Do I really want my life to change? Seriously, really, do you want to change? Is a little bit scary, because true change we don't control, and you know that. What specific change? That was one of the keys to my first journey through the steps. The man stressed specificity, not vague. Get clear, get specific, get concrete. And he said the more specific you are in your journey, especially in the 4th step, the more you will see the truth of the lie and begin to embrace the truth of the truth. Today, what's your invitation? My favorite question. I end my morning meditation. I have for the last 35 years. I have a consistent practice of meditation, 35 years. I've been sober 39, so I wasn't so good those first 4 years. But I've been very consistent since I did the steps and I learned what meditation is. And I'm going to give you a little glimpse of that later on today in that second hour of our time together. What is the invitation today? What is the invitation? I sit at the end of my meditation every morning and I ask that question, and then I be quiet and I listen to see if the tiny whispering sound or the wee small voice, various translations of the words, tiny whispering sound. We need to listen to the breath of the Spirit. The word spirit comes from the Greek word spiros, meaning breath. The tiny whispering voice. So, a lot of times I don't use the word spirituality because a lot of people have resistance to it, and it's actually not necessary. My synonym word for that is relationship. The first 3 steps are a relationship with power. I could substitute and have many times the word life for power. I do a lot of work in emotional sobriety. We don't need to talk about God or the Spirit or higher power. We need to talk about reality, maybe with a capital R. Play with it. Reality with a capital R. The first 3 steps. My relationship with reality, my relationship with life, my relationship with power. That was very important to me when I went through the steps the first time when I was 4 years sober. The next 4 steps are about a relationship with myself. Steps 4 through 7. Rehabilitating my relationship with myself. Getting acquainted with the lies that were the delusion of my belief and my motives, and getting to see the truth. It was so embarrassing. And yet it was so freeing. Because then I was able to change. Bill says it, our troubles are of our own making. That's not a negative comment. If my troubles are of Dave's making, I'm screwed. Because he has to change in order for me to be okay. But if my troubles are of my making, there's hope. Because then I need to know better in order to do better. But I know I can know better and not do better, so I also need grace to do better. Right? And that's how step 11's built. Think about how it ends. Step 11, the words. Praying for the knowledge of God's will. I need to know better. And the power to carry it out. Lots of us know better and just don't do better. Right? And the third stage, I think, of the rocket launch. Establishing and or reestablishing, rehabilitating my relationship with other people through steps 8 and 9. I could throw in step 10 at that level, but I think Bill's intention was to keep it separate so that when he talks about we enter the world of the Spirit, he talks about steps 10, 11, and 12, our way of life, our way of living. Steps 10, 11, and 12 is the way. Steps 1 through 9, at least as I interpret it, please hear me. If I don't qualify it, know that I'm qualifying it right now. And I might not remember to qualify it every time. It just gets awkward and cumbersome. But what I'm sharing is my interpretation, my experience with this. Steps 1 through 9, the program of recovery. Yep. Neutrality, page 84. Steps 10 through 12, the program of living. The program of living. The way of living. A term that was coined by somebody, I think at Betty Ford. Sober suffering. I've added serial. Well, think about it. Yeah. Oh my God. This is unmanageability. This is the spiritual malady. Sober, serial suffering. People with 5 and 10 and 20 years who are angry or anxious and or depressed and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a scientist, I'm not making comment on medication and or therapy. I'm supportive of all of that. But I'm just saying, sober suffering. Fortunately today we have lots of resources to deal with it. Do I really believe my life can change? The whole point of awakening, a word, the key word, the promised word in step 12, isn't it? Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. There's the promise. I mean, we get quoted all the time, pages 83, 84, those promises after the 9th step, don't we? The biggest promise and the most outrageous promise and the most evident promise is step 12 itself. Having had a spiritual awakening. But what does it mean? If you haven't read or haven't read recently, Appendix 2 in the back of the book, read that. It tells you what a spiritual awakening is. It makes a distinction between that and a spiritual experience. Because Bill changed step 12 in the second printing of the Big Book in 1941. 1939, the first printing was published, having had a spiritual experience. The second printing of that first edition, 1941, he changed step 12 to having had a spiritual awakening. And then he put Appendix 2 in the back of the book to explain why he did that. Maybe I'll come back to that. I'm in bondage of my addiction until I'm not. February 21st, 1984, I was given freedom. This was a cartoon from the New Yorker back before I ever came in AA, but I remembered it once I started trying to help people understand the difference and of the process itself. You notice Pathetic Herbie's still in jail, right? But there's no ceiling, there's no floor, there's no walls, there's nothing holding Pathetic Herbie in jail except he doesn't know there's no walls or floor or ceiling. He's got the bars and he's looking through the bars and he's still in prison because he's got a death grip on the bars. No, this is 1988, February 1988. I met this man who said, "You're not a Renaissance man, you're a Neanderthal." The consciousness that created the problem cannot be the consciousness that solved the problem. Are you willing to be delivered to a new knowledge and a new experience? And I learned that I had to just release the grip. When you look up the word forgiveness, and I hope you do, in the dictionary, it's not mentioned that much in the Big Book, a little bit, but not in the way I'm using it as a powerful, powerful promise of this process. Forgiveness starts, my sense is, at the beginning of the fourth step. And when you look it up in the dictionary, forgiveness means release. Look at my hand. A decision to release them. And you know from the St. Francis prayer and from the Lord's Prayer, both of them say, when we forgive, we are forgiven. When we release them from their debt, we are released. These are prayers from 2,000 years ago or 200 years ago. Wisdom, not connected, out of the literature. Read any of the spiritual traditions and they will say the same thing with different words, about forgiveness. When we decide to release them, we bring healing to them, and paradoxically, we are released and we are healed. A process that begins with the fourth step and ends with the ninth step. My interpretation of it. But I have to release, and I have to be released from this bondage of self. That's the words Bill uses, the bondage of self, in the Big Book. So what is unmanageability? What is this bondage of self? Addiction is a bondage, of course. I mentioned to you, though, and I'm using my personal story. It's not your story, but it's mine, and I hope you can translate your own story into the parts that make sense to you. Some of you are still struggling with addiction. Show up, breathe, get a sponsor and a guide, and do some work in the steps, and you'll get free. Maybe not today, and maybe not by tomorrow, but someday. I worked with a guy who relapsed for over 10 years. Finally, he got some traction, he got some freedom from his addiction, and he died after he was sober 12 years. Don't give up on yourself. But only 10% of the people are alcoholics in North America. That's science, by the way. And maybe 50% have other addictions like relationships or pornography or food or some other addiction. It's not the whole world. It's not 100% of the human race. I think unmanageability applies to all human beings. That's why Bill was able to say in the preface to the very first edition, go ahead and read it. It's in your Big Book, the preface to the first edition, first paragraph, last line of the first paragraph. I mean, it's right up front. He says, our way of living may have its advantages for all. What does he mean by that? All alcoholics? Nope. All addicts? He had no concept that this would be so effective for the 100 or 200 different fellowships that we have. No, he was referring to the human race. Our way of living may have its advantages for all human beings. My interpretation anyway. Unmanageability is the problem. Unmanageability is the problem. The spiritual malady. The spiritual malady, the bondage of self. What does it look like? Bill gives us a description. He doesn't structure the big book in the way that I have understood it now. At 10 years of sobriety, I was given this information and this experience of reading page 52. The second paragraph, the bedevilment paragraph. Bedevilment, what an odd, kind of an old-fashioned word. Look it up. To be controlled as if by devils. The word's in that paragraph. And I don't mean religious here. It's a metaphor. To be controlled like a puppet on strings is my image of it. I tied strings to people. I tied strings to circumstances. I tied strings to events. And circumstances and people and events were able to control me. But I didn't know and I couldn't see that I had tied the strings and that there were indeed strings. I was just reacting. The Neanderthal, for my survival, to get what I wanted. And this man asked me to write it and to read it out loud, to write it with a personal pronoun present tense and then to read it out loud. I am having trouble with personal relationships. Are you? I can't control my emotional nature. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10 today, it might not be a 10, and then again it might be. Or it might be just a 1 or 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. But this is the litmus test of the health of your spiritual life, of your human life, of your emotional life, of your emotional sobriety. This is the test right here. You can take it internally. I am a prey to misery and depression. P-R-E-Y. It's eating my lunch. No, I was 10 years sober, all right? Number one, yes, I was thinking of getting a divorce from a woman of 25 years at that point. I can't control my emotional nature. I have one emotion, and so I got that one pretty well tamed. That's a joke, by the way. My girls, my young women daughters call me periodically and say, how's your one feeling, Herb? In check, for sure. I am a prey to misery and depression. It's not my orientation. I'm very positive, optimistic. I was born that way. I don't take any credit for it. It's just who I am from a genetic standpoint. I can't make a living. Now, I took that into meditation because at that time, 1994, 1996, I was doing the steps with a man who was giving me the set-aside prayer and this whole new experience with unmanageability and the bedevilments. And I was taking it into meditation. I had a daily practice at that point. And I said, so how does that apply to me? I'm a professional. I have a wonderful career. I love my career. They pay me a lot of money. Never enough, but a lot of money. And right. And the wee small voice said, Herb, you can't make a living that satisfies you. Because you're never satisfied. You're a deep, dark, bottomless pit. No, my voice talks to me like that. And I said, thank you for sharing. But it was so true, right? I have a feeling of uselessness. Not so much. I'm a sponsor. I'm contributing at work. I have a family. So on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 2, very soft. I am full of fear? No. I don't get fear. I get anger, but I don't get fear. I'm a dominant anger person or a dominant shame person, but I don't get fear. I am unhappy. I was reasonably happy. I had solved a lot of the problems through doing the steps with this mechanic I told you about in 1988. But I can't be of real help to other people. And I literally asked myself the question in the set-aside prayer, in meditation. for a couple days, actually. How does that apply to me? I studied to be a Catholic priest for 7 years. I was in a monastery. All right, that's all about helping people, isn't it? I studied then to be a psychologist for 6 years. Isn't that all about helping people? And the wee small boy said, no. You wanted the Roman collar for power, and you wanted to be a psychologist for the money. It had nothing to do with people. I said, well, I'm a sponsor now. What about that? I'm having this two-way prayer with dialogue, right, with me, but it's answering back because I'm listening. And it says, Herb, you don't give a rat's about other people. You want the reputation of helping people. Oh. Yeah, you hear it, right? And I saw my narcissism in a way I'd never seen before. I was in therapy at the same time. I'm a big advocate of outside resources to supplement the work of the 12 steps. I couldn't have effective religion experience or human development experience or therapeutic experience. I couldn't have that. I had all of the exposure to it, but I had no experience until I did the steps. Once I did the steps in 1988, not important to you, but important to me, then I was able to take advantage of all of the outside other kinds of resources to help. My therapist went to his diagnostic manual when I was talking about the bedevilments. And he had a little cat swallowed the canary look on his face. And he photocopied a page from the diagnostic manual to DSM. And he brought it over to me. And it was the 9 characteristics of narcissism. He said, it's not funny. And he said, you know, Herb, the only thing missing from the DSM? I said, no. What is that? And he said, your picture. Yeah. Well, and then he explained to me that it's a character disorder, a personality disorder that cannot be treated by therapy or medication. It's indelible and immutable. At that time, I said, so how bad is it? And he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 8. And we put 10s in prison. 10 years later, after I've done this work, and he and I are establishing a professional relationship, we co-facilitate workshops together on emotional sobriety. I said, you remember that conversation, 1 to 10, 8, prison, narcissism? And I said, so how bad am I now? He said, probably about a 2.5. No, do you hear? From 8 to 2.5 over a 10-year period because of this spiritual work, because I'm committed to steps 10, 11, and 12. I'm committed to prayer and meditation. I'm committed to helping other people. Those are what I consider to be the spiritual coin of transformation, the spiritual coin of awakening and staying awake. That's why I do this work. That's why I'm here today. Because it's so powerful, it's so effective. So what do we mean by placed in a position of neutrality? Page 84, you can read it. Those are the words. I'm not making words up. Placed in a position of neutrality. That's a direct quote. After the 9th step. And then it says, but we're not cured. Not cured of what? Not cured of our unmanageability. Where we enter the world of the Spirit, Bill says in step 10, doesn't he? Well, where have I been? If I'm just now in step 10, entering the world of the Spirit, oh, I've been in steps 1 through 9, the world of self. And I've been delivered because I got on the rocket. Once you get in the rocket, page 25, rocketed into the 4th dimension. Once I get in the rocket's going to take me where the rocket's going to go. My continuing with the metaphor, the rocket takes us into orbit around the light. Stay with the images. It helps us understand this process of the 12 steps. The first 9, getting into the rocket and being delivered into orbit around the light. I have a body and a mind and a will. It's a model that I came up with after 10 years of having gone through the first step 3 different times with 3 different people. The body has an allergy that produces the craving. The mind has an obsession because it has a delusion. And we're screwed. Because we're powerless, we have no choice. The big book uses the term neutrality. But in the second title page of the, I get up to get closer so I can read it. the second page, the second title page of the big book, the first title page has the title, Alcoholics Anonymous. The second title page has many more words. It says, how many thousands of men and women have recovered? No, pay attention. That's the word that's used in the big book. Not recovery, not recovering. I don't mean to get into any type of controversy. I'm just quoting the big book. Recovered, what does that mean? All right? It means that I'm protected from the obsession of the mind, and therefore I'm not engaging in the addiction so that I'm not experiencing the allergy of craving. I have physical sobriety by the end of the 9th step. I have physical sobriety by the end of the 9th step. I am placed in a position of neutrality. But that's when he says, I'm not cured. Not of addiction. I'm in neutrality with regard to addiction. I'm never cured of my addiction. I'm always an alcoholic. Once a pickle, always a pickle. You know that I won't go through with it. Cucumber and pickle, think about it. After you become a pickle, how soon can you become a cucumber? Never. Once a pickle, always a pickle. That was 1984 in the hospital program. I've never lost that image. It's such a powerful image about no choice. It doesn't matter how you got there. If you lose control once you start, and if once you stop, you cannot stay stopped, you're probably an addict. Big book, page 44. All right? It's a summary of the first several pages, 43 pages in the big book about addiction. Not cured. What does that mean? We have a daily reprieve. Daily reprieve. Do I have a sense of well-being? Now we're into emotional sobriety question, a litmus test for you. Do you have a sense of contentment with your life today? I'm assuming that you have some abstinence. If you don't have abstinence, of course, these are not relevant questions other than to your addiction. But if you have abstinence from your addiction, whether that's 1 day or 1 decade, it doesn't matter. These are relevant questions for you because it's about emotional sobriety. Are you in harmony with life? Are you in harmony with yourself? Are you in harmony with other people? These are huge, powerful, personal questions. This is another image that helps me understand this word. Bill calls it the deflation of the ego at depth. The deflation of the ego. You've seen the dolls. I'm going to show several of them here. It's in the gift shop. These are Russian dolls. In an audience of lots of people, I had a person from Russia who said, Matrushka. Yeah, she stood up. Matrushka. And I believed her. It was very clear. It was necessary to believe her. Yeah, you got it. And she said that's the word for mother. All right, I think it's true. Sounds great. All right. I have biology genetics. You might have observed I'm white, male, bald. My father was white, bald, male. His father, all alcoholics. A genetic. Bald and alcohol, not my fault. But it is my responsibility to deal with it. And so I have to identify my story. What's my story? I was born, of course, and I was raised in a family. So there's lots of formation and deformation in a family, isn't there? I was brought into a culture and a society in which I had emotional development or not, some trauma. And I had a psychological development from the education I received, formally or informally, right? Notice the pictures are all the same. This is who we are until we find out who we're not. And that's the total point of steps 4 through 9, is to find out who I am and who I am not. And the truth will set us free. The truth of reality. If you can't read that smaller one, it says reality, truth. And we unpack it and we unpack it. It took 3 different journeys through the steps with 3 different step mechanics for me to completely unfold all of this, what I'm telling you. I'm giving you the condensed version over a 12-year period with those 3 different men. Going through the big book with a precision, both the knowledge and the experience, so that I was able to finally develop some sense of emotional. I got it in the first journey because it was really stabilizing to know the truth about the lie. But then as I progressed and got more information and had more transformation, I was able to live progressively in the light and diminish the darkness. This awakening is that turning of the self-centeredness to other-centeredness. As I mentioned earlier, you may have not heard it. I want you to hear it and see it. Steps 11 and 12, the coin of emotional sobriety, the coin of spiritual sobriety, the coin of our way of life. Heads and tails. One coin, 2 sides. Step 11 and step 12, an integrated methodology of leading our life, our way of life. And yet, Dr. Thibault says, Bill got it right. The first 9 steps are for the deflation of the ego at depth. The first 9 steps are for the ego deflation at depth. But the ego has an uncanny way of regenerating itself. One of the philosophers, Gurdjieff, a Russian philosopher in the 19th century, said, most human beings are asleep, dreaming that we are awake. No, it's so powerful. Think about it. Most human beings are asleep, dreaming that we are awake. Step 12 says we want you to wake up. Step 10 says we want you to stay awake. Step 11 says we want you to improve your awakeness. Step 12 says we want to enlarge our awakeness. It's all about being awake. Consciousness is the key. Consciousness is the key. It's the definition of what makes us specifically human. That in fact I know and I can make a decision consciously with intention to take action. And if I take negative action, that's a vice. And if I take positive action, that's a virtue. It's really all that simple. Bill says it many times. We're at the fork in the road. In my terminology, we can choose the dark path, the path that's traveled by most people, a path into darkness. Or we can choose the path of light, to the light, in the light, as the light, the road less traveled. That's our road. That's what you're here for. That's what you're doing. And that's what this is reinforcing, I hope. It's all about those beliefs, though, in the step 10. My belief is like a lens through which I look. When I look through these glasses, because they're refined by an optometrist, I can see objective reality more clearly. When I take them off, it's a bit blurry. If they weren't grounded correctly, I wouldn't know that they're blurry, because those are the lenses through which I'm looking. The process of 4 through 9 especially allows us to look at the lenses through which we're looking so that we can have the lenses reground and see reality more clearly. It's a fabulous image of this process of coming to grips with the truth. And my experience is that it's not a one and done. That's just my experience. I know people that do the steps once and they live rigorously in 10, 11, and 12. I guess I'm not that rigorous because I've had to go through the steps multiple times. But I also know people who go through the steps once a year. Whatever you want to do, of course. It's your time, it's your life, I don't find it necessary. I haven't gone through the steps in 20 years. The last time I went through the steps with a guide was 2003. I haven't found it necessary because I'm more or less rigorous about 10, 11, and 12. But the whole point of this is the lenses through which I look are the beliefs that I have. Those lenses are distorted until they're reground. And if my lenses are distorted, my emotions that come from my survival needs are disturbed. 12 and 12? You know the 12 and 12, step 10. If you haven't read it or haven't read it recently, it's a fabulous chapter on step 10. It really clarifies the use of step 10. A lot of people don't really understand what step 10 is. Step 10 is a tool like my clicker that I have here. Step 10 is the tool when I'm disturbed. It says in 12 and 12. It's a spiritual axiom. Whenever I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. I'm quoting. It's a spiritual axiom. Whenever I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. Now, I know that's the truth because I did the fourth step. I did it accurately and effectively out of the big book. And when I did the column 4 of the resentment inventory, I was converted from a perennial victim to a perennial perpetrator. Yeah, my troubles are of my own making. Now, you create lots of mischief. It's a wonderful word, isn't it? Mischief. Yeah, it covers all kinds of sins, right? Venial and mortal if you've got a Catholic background. Exactly, mischief. It's just, it communicates the vicissitudes of life, the difficulties of life. People's manifestation of their own selfishness and self-centeredness. And I'm not judging, I'm observing. Exactly. Step 4, resentment inventory, column 3, is about the lie, the beliefs, the delusions. Step 4 is about seeing the truth. We have a daily reprieve. It says, watch for resentment, fear, dishonesty, and selfishness. Now I'm quoting again from page 84. It's a very packed page 84 and 85. I mean, you almost have to take each word in the context of the phrase and look at it and talk about it and meditate about it and do it more than once because those 2 pages are a fabulous summary of the overall program and the invitation to stay awake. It says watch for resentment, fear, dishonesty, and selfishness. Those are the 4 ingredients of step 4. Step 10 is a wash, rinse, and repeat, right? But he gives us a specific methodology for dealing with it. Now, the 12 and 12 has a wonderful commentary on step 10 in which he clarifies the use of step 10. We don't use it at night, please. We don't use it in writing, please. It's a tool that we use, like I have this clicker for our immediate use. When I'm disturbed, I pray. I speculate, I pray because I'm powerless. We discuss it with somebody, I speculate because I'm human. We make an amend, I speculate because if I'm disturbed, I'm sure as hell going to be disturbing you. I'm a sharer. Thank you for listening. That's right, that's right. No, we're contagious. I mean, we're so sensitive to these words now because of the pandemic. We are contagious. Who we are is what we emanate. Who we are is what we exude. Who we are is how we impact our environment. Doesn't matter what we think or intend or say. Who we are is contagious. You know, one of the saints back in the day, I think it was Augustine in the 4th century, said, wherever you are in the world, preach the good news. Now, he's a bishop of the Catholic Church. He's an ordained priest, and he's obviously talking about 4th century, about the gospel of Jesus, etc. And so he's an evangelist. He's talking about the good news of the gospel of Christianity. I'm not when I quote him. Because he says, wherever you are, preach the good news. If you have to, use words. Oh, that's brilliant. Because you're the good news. Or the bad news. Right. Who you are is what you... Exactly. And so the final thing is to... And it's brilliant the way he phrases it. He says, we help somebody, but he doesn't say it that way. He says, we think about how we can contribute to somebody else. Notice he's saying, because I might be at work, I might be at home, I might be in a situation where I can't actually step out of the situation to do something to take care of being disturbed. But I can be aware of it and make a commitment to, at some point when I'm not otherwise occupied, to take the action. Bill calls it a spot check inventory in step 10 in the 12 and 12. Brilliant. Now, I don't have any problem with anybody using step 10 in any way that's effective for them. If they want to do it in writing, go for it. If they want to do it at night, who cares? I mean, really, seriously. I mean, lighten up, right? But the proper use of the tool is like this sound pack I have here. I wouldn't be able to deliver the sound if I didn't have the sound pack here. When I'm disturbed and I'm aware that I'm disturbed, I own it and I go, okay, where's that coming from? Anger, fear, dishonesty, inevitably my self-centeredness. Okay, that's a whoops. How can I correct it? Now or later. That's the point. And of course, I put, maybe not of course, but I put the positive outcomes if we do that. This isn't in the big book or in the 12 and 12, but it's for me, it's the intuitive opposite of that first column. Resentment, forgiveness, I've already mentioned it. Fear, trust. Check page 68 of the big book, step 4, inventory, where he says, we have fear to the extent that we don't trust. To the extent that we do trust, we don't have fear. I think it's a reciprocal relationship. It's not mutually exclusive. They live together. To the extent I have fear, I don't have trust. To the extent I have trust, I don't have fear. But they live together. I'm human. Honesty. You know, Bill has a chapter 5, how it works. We become brain dead to it because we hear it most of the time at least in AA 12-step meetings, read at the beginning. And, oh yeah, I can make my grocery list during that time. Yeah, no, or have a little nap, all right? No, listen to it, listen. But what's the theme of the first page of how it works, chapter 5, how it works? 2/3 of the page is about honesty. And in fact, he says rigorous honesty. I read an author who calls it radical honesty. I recently just heard a podcast by somebody who calls it ruthless honesty. That's kind of scary. I like radical, all right? But ruthless tells you a little bit about the rigor of this. Honesty, transparent. He said we have to have the capacity for it. The capacity for it. That's why he talks about people with constitutionally incapable, meaning they're sociopaths or they're psychopaths, and organically they don't have it. All right? But mental and emotional people, he says it right there. If they have the capacity for honesty, then they've got a chance at this sobriety business. and to be helpful. Notice I've used the words in the middle column and the final column at the end in all caps. Because I think that this is the key to sustained recovery. Because my problem is my self-centeredness, my solution is being other-centered, and the evidence of that is that I'm helping somebody. I'm helping somebody. I don't necessarily mean in a 12-step program. Could be your family, could be your church, could be your neighborhood, could be your community, wherever that is. I'm helping wherever I am. And that's my conscious vision of my role and my responsibility in the world. I have no problem picking up a little bit of trash where I'm walking in the park, because it's a park I love. And I have a sense of responsibility, not to replace the janitors whose responsibility it is, but occasionally. See, this is emotional sobriety. Step 10, I do believe, is the tool of emotional sobriety. Look up at me here. Here's the life flow. All right? Whatever it means to you, the life flow, the evolution of life, God as I don't understand it, the spirit, the higher power, life itself, reality itself. And look at my hands. I've been given free will. When I'm disturbed, I'm using my free will against reality. Reality is reality 100% of the time, and I want it to match my needs, my story, my wants. And when I do that, I suffer, and so do the people around me. The whole point, watch my hands, the whole point of this program is to turn from this self-centeredness, step 3, to be in alignment with the flow. Here's step 3. Please hear step 3. We do not turn our will and our life over to God. That is absolutely incorrect, and I'll not apologize for that statement. Step 3 says we turn our will and our life over to the care of God. Like the GPS. You get in your car, it's your car. You know how to drive. You know where you want to go. Usually you have an address, but you have a GPS and you don't know how to get there. So you put the you put the address into the GPS, and what do you do then? You listen to the GPS and you follow direction. This is so perfect for us. All right? In step 10, GPS, God Positioning System. Oh, I know, I got it from you guys. At one time, somebody yelled it out to me, and I've adopted it, of course. It's wonderful. Emotional sobriety, I want to be in alignment with the flow of reality. Reality is not personal, like gravity. It just is. And gravity doesn't care what I want, what I feel, what I know, and even what I do. All right? If I'm out of alignment with principles, that's why step 12 is so important. If I'm out of alignment with principles, reality will crush me. That's where the disturbance comes from. I'm out of alignment with operating principles. The direction I give inevitably to each person I'm working with when they talk to me about issues. Certainly we talk about the steps. No, we talk about life too. I ask them, identify what is the operating principle. Identify what is the operating. Is it integrity? Is it fidelity? Is it rigorous honesty? What is the operating principle? Always use the principle. Now here's where it gets a little rigorous. Always take the high road and always be generous. It's never failed me or them. I know. They say to me, do I always have to take the high road? I said, no, absolutely not. But you do have to suffer the consequences of taking the low road. Because if I turn right, there are going to be consequences. First, I can't turn left. And there will be implications of turning right. My actions will always have consequences. If you want to know what you believe, look at your feet. How do you behave? If you want to know who you are, look at your feet. How do you behave? If you want to know what you believe, look at your feet. How do you behave? Your behavior tells you what you believe. Your behavior tells you what your intentions are. Your behavior tells you who you are. God, it's so awful. No, because it's so objective. It's not negotiable. If I'm robbing a bank, I'm a bank robber. I'm not Robin Hood. Exactly. Oh my God. All right, secret number 4, our way of life. Our way of life is a daily practice. This is the best kept secret in the rooms. Number 1, practice. Number 2, daily. Bill got it. He didn't use the word at the end of the steps, did he? Page 60. But he does say progress, not perfection. And you've heard it in some context. I'm not sure actually where it comes from. Practice makes perfect. No, it doesn't. No, practice makes progress. I don't get perfect playing the piano or going to the gym or riding a bicycle or whatever else it is that I want to get better at. Lose the word perfect. Oh, I do workshops, and I've become very painfully aware for people's orientation toward perfectionism. Underneath, they have this drive and energy and delusion that perfection is the model to strive for, to actually accomplish. And that's not the point of the steps at all. These are models of standards and virtues and invitations to improve on a regular basis. And when I tell people, lose the word perfection, all right? Whatever, and this could be quite comforting, and I'm not meaning to cut you any slack at all. That's just not my style. Yeah, you already know that. But what you do is good enough. The big book says half measures availed us nothing. And I understand the spirit of that. I understand the spirit. I accept the spirit of that. I just don't believe it's true. Half measures get us something. Half measures get us something. And whatever we do is good enough, even though it doesn't feel good enough right now. Because it's some progress, it's some incremental improvement, it's some action on our part. Whatever we do is good enough, even though we know in our heart, please hear this. I'm not cutting you slack. I'm giving you comfort and encouragement, because it's my total experience. Whatever you do is good enough for right now. Even by today's standards, it's not good enough for me. But when I look at it a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and I look back, it was good enough to get me here later on. That I took incremental actions, and it was really awkward, and it was really not very meaningful, and it wasn't very effective, but it was well-intentioned. I went to a meeting every day. That was not effective. I did not change. I went early and I stayed late. That was very effective in terms of me becoming connected to the community and being accepted by and feeling welcome by the community. So all of that was very good, but it didn't change me. Only when I began doing the steps out of the book over the next 12 years with 3 different people, as I've mentioned over and over again, did I progressively make change. And not the first time I went through the steps, but the 3rd time I went through the steps, the entire puzzle piece came together and I could see the full picture 12 years later. I'm not saying you may be smarter, faster, luckier, I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. What I'm trying to say is it's like a dimmer switch, right? It's like a dimmer switch. There's a light switch here someplace, and if it hit the button, the lights would go off and it'd be dark, and if you hit the button again, the lights would go on and it'd be light. But also notice that the back room, just the lights went down a little bit. All right, because there's a dimmer switch here. We are like a dimmer switch in relationship to the light. We wake up with a little bit of abstinence, however we get that. And then as we do the step work, we begin to continuously wake up. And step 11 is very clear, to improve our conscious contact. And I use a word in step 12, I'll come to in a minute, enlarge our capacity. We improve and we enlarge, and the dimmer switch goes up. And the really good news, bottom line here, is a wonderful metaphor for your meditation. We're in relationship with infinite light. The dimmer switch will continue to go up. There will always be more light in our lifetime. It's an adventure. It's totally my experience. Not that I'm aware every day of more light, but regularly I'm aware that I look back over my shoulder and I go, oh, I didn't see that yesterday, but now I see that today, in a good sense. Our way of life is step 10, clearing the channel, a spot check inventory, filling the channel. Again, coming from the St. Francis prayer, make me a channel. I'm a channel of life. I'm a channel of grace. I'm a channel of light. I'm a channel of God. Pick your nomenclature, pick your words. They're wonderful words to give you a robust meditation. Filling the channel through prayer and meditation, emptying the channel, helping other people. You've heard the Cohen song about the light gets in through the cracks in us, but the light gets out through the cracks in us. We're the wounded healers, because the light comes in and heals us, but it goes out through the wounds in us through the cracks in others to heal them. It's a beautiful song. Andrew Cohen, I think it is. And our way of living is the daily practice. I wonder if Bill meant daily practice, daily reprieve. Really, why would he use that word? In fact, in 12 and 12, in step 11, he gives us this image. In the same way we need air, water, food, and sunshine on a daily basis to nurture and have the body survive, we need prayer and meditation on a daily basis so that the soul can be nurtured and survive. And you hear it, and it's wonderful, and it's poetic, and it's heartwarming. If you're not doing it, you don't believe it. If you're not doing it, you don't believe it. What you do is what you believe. I don't have time? Okay. You don't believe you're powerless. I don't have time? You don't believe there's a power. I don't have time? You don't believe that the power is available. I don't have time? Prayer meditation doesn't access power. Those are the only alternatives. You have lots of other reasons. You call them excuses or explanations. I don't mean to, yes I do. I mean to confront you. You've heard it before, and I don't mean to be too glib, but it's a great phrase. I have come here to comfort the disturbed, but to disturb the comfortable. Yeah. That's why I call it the best kept secrets. Daily practice. Yeah. I call it spiritual sobriety. It could be just an extension of emotional sobriety. I'm not locked into the words. But as I say, I use the term spiritual sobriety as a coin that heads and that tails that step 11 and that step 12. But here's the underlying assumption going back to step 2. Oh my goodness. I mentioned that I studied to be a Catholic priest. What I didn't say, and many of you know this, I was in a monastery for 7 years. 7 years of silence. I haven't stopped talking since. But I took off my black robe in 1964, and I hung up my black robe after 7 years of silence and 7 years of daily meditation, and I didn't meditate again for another 25 years. What's that? Well, that's a man who took from the outside to make him a monk, and monks meditate. I took off my robe. I'm not a monk. I don't meditate because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know the benefit of it. But in 1988, 4 years sober, when I went through this work, and I understood the 2.5 pages that Bill has, pages 85 to 88, the best synopsis of what meditation is and how to do it that I've ever come across. You want to know how to do meditation and prayer? Read the pages 85 to 88. Now, I couldn't read it on my own. I had to have a man help me. But I had to have this sense of power also in steps 2 and 3. Is there a power? The underlying assumption of step 11 is that there is a power that I'm connected to. Is it necessary? Are you really powerless? I could see that in addiction, although addiction disappeared in my life with no fanfare at all. But unmanageability became really the mantra for me of the need for power, because I saw that 4 years sober, I was restless, irritable, and discontented on my own power. Is power necessary? Is light necessary? This is from the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo. God on the, what would that be? On the right-hand side, reaching down to create human beings. It's in the Torah, the Genesis, the first book of the Torah, the Hebrew scripture, and it says, God created humans in God's image and likeness. Whew. You want to have a meditation? Take that one in. God created humans in God's image and likeness, and the balance of the sentence is, God created them male and female. Very interesting. Just some shepherd on a hill writing some poetry to the moon and the stars, right? 5,000 years ago. It's wonderful poetry, wonderful theology, actually. Receive the light in steps 1 through 10. See, we wake up by the end of the 9th step. Bill says we enter the world of the Spirit. Whew. At the end of the 9th step. We enter the world of the Spirit. Where the hell have we been? Well, yeah, I mean, I interact with the Big Book this way. I mean, it's a live text, and it leads me into wonderful experiences. Where have I been? Steps 1 through 9, and now I'm just entering the world of, I've been in the world of self. Steps 1 through 9. And I'm delivered into the world of spirit. The rocket launch, the first 3 stages of the rocket launch. I got in the rocket when I came into AA, or a comparable 12-step fellowship, and I began working the steps, and the first 3 steps is the first stage of the rocket launch, a relationship with power. The next 4 steps are that relationship with myself. The second stage of the rocket launch. The third stage of the rocket launch is a relationship with other people. Steps 8 and 9. And now I'm launched into orbit around the light. These are my images of Bill's metaphor when he says we're rocketed into the 4th dimension. Have you stopped to think about what is the 4th dimension? And then my question was, well, what are the first 3 dimensions? All right. Well, then I thought about the movies that I go to with those glasses that say 3D on the side. It stands for dimension, 3 dimension. That would be height, width, and depth, the material world. 4th dimension. I'm delivered into the immaterial world, the invisible world, the world of the Spirit. Well, that's exactly what Bill said. I enter the world of the Spirit. And I grow in this light through 11 and 12. As I mentioned, the coin, to improve my conscious contact, that's in the step itself. And then I use the word enlarge our conscious contact. From the story that Bill has on pages 35 to 37, if you haven't read Jim's story, it says, after a lot of work, with some people in a program of recovery, maybe Bill and Bob in the Oxford group. He got sober and he got his life back, he got his wife back, and he got a job. But then it says ominously. Page 35. He failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Well, immediately, because I didn't know the big book much at that time, I said, oh, he wasn't praying and meditating. Oh, he wasn't going to church. These were all of my early kind of, what does it mean? He failed to enlarge his spiritual life. But then as I became more acquainted with the big book, and I was reading Bill's story consciously on page 14 at the very bottom of the page, it says, we failed to enlarge our spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others. Oh, well, that's what Jim wasn't doing. He got his life back, he got his wife back, he got his job back, and he was busy. And he was busy. Yeah, he got real busy. And he was happy. And then he's at a restaurant having a little lunch and a sandwich, and he thought it would be a good idea to put a little whiskey in his milk. Right? There's the obsession. Because he didn't have protection. He hadn't enlarged his spiritual life by helping somebody else. He failed to enlarge and perfect his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others. Work and self-sacrifice. Coming from the Latin word, two Latin words, sacrifice. It doesn't mean to give up and to be painful. It does probably mean to be frustrated and to be, yeah, exactly. It comes from two Latin words, sacer, meaning to do, and facere. Sacer meaning holy and facere meaning to do. Sacer, facere, to make priestly or to make holy, sacrifice, to make us holy. Not in the sense of creating pain, but in the sense of a direction, of choosing the light rather than choosing the darkness. And Bill says we in the same section, 84-85, we grow in understanding and effectiveness. Listen how he talks. The two things that make us specifically human are that we can think with a mind and self-reflect. No other sentient being can do that. But to know better is not to do better, so the other part is our will, our free will. We can choose to go left and to go right. We can choose virtue or vice. We have free will. All civilizations have been built on the basis that each individual has the ability to make a choice, to take an action, and to then be responsible for the consequences of their action. Free will is the basis of society, the basis of civilization. Free will. But Bill says we're not free. Step one, in addiction, we're certainly not free. We're in the bondage of addiction, body and mind. Body craving, allergy, and mind obsession and delusion. But then he says, our life is unmanageable, but he gives us a dash that our life had become unmanageable, not because of our addiction. Otherwise, it would have been and. There's a dash there that means it's a new thought. It's still under the umbrella of no choice, powerless. Try that, by the way. If you're using the word powerless a lot, you've become brain dead to it. Try the word no choice. When I take a drink, I'll stay with alcohol, that's my experience. When I take a drink, I have no choice. My body will demand more alcohol because of the allergy craving concept. When I don't take a drink and I don't want to take a drink and I intend not to take a drink and I'm doing lots of things not to drink, I will drink again. On my own power. That's the subversive, insidious sense of the mental obsession. And unless I have a spiritual shield, my terms, which Bill gives us sort of the indication of at the end of the 9th step. We're not cured. We have a daily reprieve. We've entered the world of the Spirit, and unless I have the shield of the Spirit, an effective connection that protects me from the obsession, I will be hijacked by the obsession. I have a spiritual shield because I'm effectively connected to the light, and the light protects me. All right? And I can sustain that spiritual shield by my step 10 and 11 and 12 work. He says we grow in understanding, that is, improving our conscious contact, and effectiveness in step 12, meaning the proper use of our will to be in alignment with reality, to operate on principles of helping other people. It's organic. It's universal. This is the truth. Read good psychology. Read good religion. Read good self-help. They all have the same kind of conclusion. If you want to be happy, and that's your only goal, you'll never be happy. Well, that's a bummer. No, Dennis Prager. I mean, he woke me up to that after I had done some work, and I was listening to one of his podcasts. He said, if that's your goal, to be happy, you will never be happy. Because happiness is not a product, it's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of my relationship with a meaning broader than myself. Do you hear the echoes of step 11? And a contribution to humanity. Oh, do you hear the echoes of step 12? It's a byproduct. This is how the world is built. This is how each of us is built. And we can't change it. It's the nature of reality. At least this is my interpretation, both from a philosophical and a theological standpoint. I am human because I have a mind that thinks and it needs to understand reality as it is. And I have a will that makes decisions based on what I know. And I take actions, and then I course correct in step 10 when in fact the actions don't produce the outcome I want. I make less mistakes now. I make less gross mistakes. I see them more quickly, I correct them more effectively on a regular basis. Bill says, watch for when they crop up. Again, page 84. He doesn't say if they crop up. We're human beings, and we will be regularly disturbed. We grow in understanding and effectiveness. What about meditation? Wow, the big book is such a power description. He tells us what to do in the evening. When we close our day down, we've used step 10 during the day to deal with disturbance. And in the evening, because we're now quiet and we can probably look at things more objectively, we can in fact realize that we were disturbed and we didn't use step 10. Then we can use step 11. There's an inventory, very simple. That's the first instruction in step 11 in the big book. But this man gave me an instruction which I really encourage you to do, and that is look up the word in a dictionary, please. A commercial dictionary. Look up the word meditation. You will be surprised if it's a good dictionary, if it's an effective, healthy dictionary. Lots of times they give us words that they define with other words, which is not very helpful. My dictionary says meditation is directed thinking, the use of my mind to think. That was completely in 1988 opposite as to the way I had approached meditation because I had been a dilettante Buddhist and in the monastery a dilettante contemplative. And it was all about not thinking. It was all about silence. It was all about distance from thinking. It was all about emptiness. And here it's saying, no, meditation is the use of my mind to think, to reflect, to discern, to come to a conclusion, and to get guidance. And then when I understood the Oxford group approach to step 11 and Bill's experience and training in step 11, that's exactly what it means in step 11. The Oxford group said we use meditation to get guidance. And so this man said to me, read it, Herb. It says, ask God to direct our thinking. Then he looked at me straight in the eye and he said, Herb, that's a prayer. Anytime we're talking to God, and you've heard it in the rooms, when you're talking to God, that's prayer. All right? When you're listening to God, that's meditation. That's actually deep wisdom that I never heard until I went through this exercise with this man with the dictionary and the big book. The big book actually says, after you ask God to direct our thinking, and this man said, and it's a prayer here, but goes like this: God, please direct my thinking. You gotta love the simplicity of it, right? God, please direct my thinking. And then the big book says, think. No, I'm quoting. Think about the 24 hours ahead. And it also says, consider your plans for the day. Two different instructions. Bill doesn't tell us if there's a difference. I like to give some meaning to it, so I say Bill isn't redundant, and he's very careful with his English language and the use of the words. Maybe, just maybe, think about the 24 hours ahead is about my activity, my day planner. What am I going to do today? And maybe, just maybe, in contrast to that, consider my plans for the day is about my actions, my being. Who am I going to be today? Think about what I'm going to do today. Who am I going to be today? I look at my day planner for my to-do list, and I look at my yesterday's attitude and outcomes to see if, in fact, let's see. Yesterday I was inconsiderate. Today I'll be more considerate. Yesterday I was reactive. Today I'll try to be more pausing and responsive. Yesterday I was very distracted. Today I'll try to be more mindful. Normally the thoughts are in the area of the character defect du jour. Yeah, I'm just dealing with me as a human being. I'm not perfect, and I can improve today on yesterday. And I want to, but I can't do it on my own, so I do it in guidance. Now, here's what's not in the big book, and this is the central piece of my teaching on meditation. And again, if you get this one thing today, your time here will be well spent. It says we pray to God to direct our thinking, and then we begin thinking. What it doesn't say is what this man gave me, which was the key that unlocked meditation for me for the last 35 years. He said, and we listen to our thinking as the possibility of a direct message in response to our prayer. I ask God to direct my thinking. I begin thinking. I listen to my thinking as the answer to the prayer, the message, the medium, the guidance, the direction, the intuition, the inspiration. These are Bill's words in the big book. He says, we will practice this inspiration and these intuitions, and we will get better at it so that we can, in fact, be more in alignment and less out of alignment. Well, he doesn't use those words, but I'm assuming that's a relevant comment to make in this area. I'm looking for guidance. My thoughts, my feelings, my imagination, my memory, my instincts, my intuitions, all these, my sensations, I'm just listening intently because I want to be guided. Now, contemplation is a totally different methodology and practice. I've incorporated it into my Step 11 practice. It's a subject for a different day. Bill never anticipated it in the big book, but it's absolutely my experience of that empty mind, empty silence, being in a relationship. Contemplation comes from the Latin word templare, meaning temple space. I'm sitting in the house of the divine, wherever I am, in the temple space. Bill, in fact, calls the 12-step fellowship the cathedral of God. Oh, I know, it's fabulous. The cathedral of God. I'm reading some Islam theology right now, and they actually talk about the world and life is the mosque of God. It's so interesting that it's so similar, parallel in terms of these prophets and these mystics. Bill was a prophet and a mystic. I'm very confident of that. Not in the traditional sense, but through his revelations to us and the integrity of the big book as it has been sustained all these years and its effectiveness. I've never read a book that's more profoundly effective when I understand how to apply it. And I have a person who helps me translate it into action. We pause when agitated and doubtful. There's a lot of reasons in the Big Book and the 12 and 12 for people to interpret, to use step 10 at night. And Bill created some of that confusion. It doesn't make any difference. The whole point of step 10 is a tool to keep us functioning in alignment with reality during the daytime. And step 11 is a course correction at night and a guidance in the morning. And I think that's the important part of it. Bill says we do it twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. A lot of teachers talk about 20 minutes as a goal, but if you're not doing it, try 1 minute. Not 1 minute of prayer, not 1 minute of reading, not 1 minute of writing. Those are all valid spiritual practices. 1 minute of intentional thinking. 1 minute. Time it. 1 minute of intentional thinking. Listening to my thoughts as the possible message from the Spirit. And then allow the Spirit to develop to 2 minutes or whatever your overall goal is, or your direction from your sponsor, spiritual director, or step guide. One of my teachers says there's only 2 mistakes that you can make in meditation: not show up and leave early. Well, I love simplicity, right? It's a method, not a technique. It's not like pounding beads or, praying prayers and, oh my God, we become robots. So easy. We're asleep dreaming that we're awake. The whole point of this is consciousness, intentionality, very awake. An action based on faith. I went back to steps 2 and 3. There is no visible, measurable reality that God exists by objective scientific standards. But I've chosen to believe that there is this Spirit, and I live my life accordingly, and my life flourishes. So I actually don't care. I don't care. I don't have to defend it. When I live this way, my life works. So why wouldn't I do it? And it's an awareness, not a feeling. As addicts, be very careful of connecting feeling to your spiritual life. Because when you're not feeling good about it, you'll stop doing it. It's really a decision and a choice of a way of life and a way of living, an experience. It's not knowledge, not a task, an experience. Become a lantern. My favorite image recently is that we are all invited to be lanterns. Lanterns on the path with a bright light. We're not the light. But to the extent that we keep the lenses clean, step 10, and practice meditation, we have a bright light, and we're able to shine the light on the path. This is the change of the 12-step spiritual awakening, a change in the way we think and feel and behave, done to us, not by us, but not without us. That grace of willingness and that grace of action. And which comes first, willingness or action? I have no idea. Willingness or grace, all right? I took it into meditation. Many of you have heard the poem. I was taken to a place of willingness. Hear the grace. I was taken to a place of willingness. But I was willing to be taken. Did I just explain it? No. Did I give some sort of satisfactory poetry about it? Maybe. I hope so. It was good enough for me. No. I believe the words I'm saying. Some of the words I'm saying I don't really understand. But I operate this way anyway. And when I operate this way and I look back over my shoulder, I go, yeah. Damn, it works. Well, I love words. And I floundered before I came into the program. And the first 4 years, as I look back, I floundered because I was restless, irritable, and discontented. I didn't know that I didn't know. I wasn't drinking, nor was I attempted to drink. But I floundered. And then I did this work for the first time in 1988, and my life began to flourish. That's the word I use. Flourish. Ask yourself, does your life flourish? Do you have a sense of contentment and adventure and curiosity and excitement and hope, actually? Does your past give you a sense of hope for your present and your future? Just questions to wake us up. One of the best things that the people who took me through the steps wasn't that they gave me information. They helped me ask questions. They didn't give me the questions. They gave me the opportunity to frame the questions so that as I read the big book and followed their instructions and did some action in the context of a set-aside attitude and a set-aside prayer, I was able to have a new experience. So who's coming to save me? Whoop! Oh my God, there's a story, I have not seen it myself, of a psychologist on the West Side that on the entrance to his office, can you just imagine this huge big sign that says, "Nobody's coming"? Can you imagine walking into this man, checkbook in hand, and it says, "Nobody's coming"? What a great challenge, right? Intimidating. But I took it into meditation. What does it mean for us? Oh, I'm the one I'm waiting for. Yeah. Nobody's coming. Disney didn't, they've entertained us, but they didn't do much of a service to us because we believe in fairy tales, fairy dust, princesses and magic wands and the Calvary's coming and something. No, it's not. No, we're alone. We're alone. To the extent that we're in the quiet of ourselves. And that's why we establish community, and that's why we establish a relationship with the teacher. The program, all right? Meetings are really, one of the foundations, but they won't change you. You can take your car to a mechanic and sit there with him reading the mechanic's manual. You and he reading that for days, and the car won't get fixed. Yeah, meetings are wonderful. I'm very supportive. I found my teachers in the meetings, but the big book is the textbook, and they helped me read it and to apply those steps in a precise process, and I learned how to pray and the need for it because I'm powerless on my own power. That's not knowledge now, that's an experience. I'm totally convinced. I have lots of power now. I've been empowered by this process. I do manage my life, by the way. I have managed my life for 35 years. After I did this work, I'm responsible to manage my life in partnership. That's the phrase I use now. It's a new phrase for me this year. I'm in partnership with power. God or the Spirit or the divine, this mystery, is the managing partner. I sit in the morning with my managing partner and we discuss what the invitation is for the day. And I plug in. None of you would leave your cell phone unplugged in to a power source over a day. And why is that? Because you need and want the use of your cell phone for navigating your life. All right, and so you plug it in relentlessly. You always have time to plug in your cell phone. Yeah, think about it. Do you have time to plug yourself in to power? I think sponsorship is the most important piece of this work. I used to think meetings, and then I worked the steps, and then I thought steps, and then I saw people who worked the steps and had a spiritual awakening fall away in some form, either through relapse or through chaos. Not my experience, but I saw a half a dozen of my counterparts. And I asked each one of them in long interviews with them, personal, quiet, intimate interviews. Every one of them, for whatever reason, thought once they had had this awakening and a relationship with God, that God was their sponsor. Yeah. I don't know the truth of it, but I think sponsors probably, at this point in my consciousness, the most important part. Because if you have a regular relationship with an experienced person, you will do all the other parts. You will do all the other parts. A regular, you call them, you talk to them, you take direction. With an experienced person, they know the big book, they've had a spiritual awakening, they know how to apply the steps to have that spiritual awakening. It's the dimmer switch here. I'm going to end on time in 6 minutes. And so that's meant to indicate that the dimmer switch goes up a notch at a time. But it goes down a notch at a time. And unless we lean into it on a daily basis, the dimmer switch is hardwired to go down. The dimmer switch is hardwired to go backwards. Like Thibault said, the ego has an uncanny way of regenerating itself. So who is coming to help them? No, this is the appeal here. The final appeal of step 12, isn't it? Who's coming to help them? Each one of us has a responsibility. We are the ones they are waiting for. All right? And chapter 7 that talks about step 12, how to help other people, has this brilliant line at the very beginning. Nothing will so much ensure immunity. We're also wonderfully sensitive today because of the pandemic to immunity. Nothing will so ensure immunization as intensive work with others. Notice the vocabulary Bill uses. He uses this rigor of adjectives, rigorous honesty, diligent effort, intensive work. Yeah. We light the path for others because we become a lantern. My image is I'm a lantern that is posted on the side of the path to shine the light of my experience on the path that I walk so that others can walk the path in the light of that experience to have their own experience. I'm not here to build little Herbies. Not one bit. No. I want everybody to have their own unique experience with awakening and then carrying the message, whatever that message is, from them. Happy, joyous, and free. Words from the big book, right? What is your commitment to consciousness? Gratitude, of course. Read the books on happiness. Read the books on positive psychology. Read the human development books. Gratitude is an absolute key. And if you don't have it, manufacture it. Fake it. You've heard about the gratitude list. I have a different approach to it. Not making a list in any long sense, but every day adding one thing you're grateful for that day. Just one, but the rule is, imposed by me, you can never put the same word on the list. Oh, after 30 days of individual words, you're going to have to kind of be creative and stretch to find out what you're grateful for today. Oh, let's see, I got up and I was able to urinate. That was good. I don't want to be gross, but I do know it's late. Prayer, all right? What's the point of prayer? I mean, it's pretty, whether it's pray in the sense of acknowledging, we don't pray to change God. Let's get real. Whatever this is, this reality that we call God, it can't change. If it is, it can't change. Bill says it, page 53. God is or God isn't. God is everything or there is no God. Page 53. Bill was the prophet. He was the mystic. He saw through it. Prayer doesn't change God. What does prayer do? It changes the prayer. It makes us more conscious. And you could call it positive affirmation. That's great. It works. Meditation, as I've indicated, is probably my most favorite subject. I've done more work, recorded more work, written books about meditation, because I think it's the key to expanding and securing our humanity. Guidance and power, as Bill says in the step itself. But then to be helpful, the other side of the coin. And the Buddhists have a great phrase, loving kindness. That captures it, loving kindness. I have a lens on each eye. And that lens is, how can I be helpful? That's where I come from. I'm not always helpful. I'm not always conscious of that. But when I'm conscious about it, intentional about it, that's the lens through which I look. With individuals, in the workshops, in the meetings, or just in the family or in the community. How can I be helpful? At the grocery store, I look through the lens. How can I contribute to the life around me to make it more comfortable for the people around me? And then accountability, as I mentioned. Accountability. I think it's the key because we're human. I can have a relationship with God. Wonderful. I can have a relationship with myself. Wonderful. But when I have a relationship of transparency with an accountability partner, my life works a lot better. And I'm a better person on a regular basis. Step 10, receiving the light. Step 11, becoming the lantern. And lighting the path in step 12. Just to confirm the image or the words that I had earlier, steps 1 through 9, the program of recovery, optimal recovery for freedom from our addiction. Steps 10 through 12, we enter the world of the Spirit, optimal living. A phrase I got from Dr. Berger, a clinical psychologist with whom I do a lot of emotional sobriety work. And the word I use is flourish. Freedom is really good. Freedom from addiction and freedom from unmanageability. But the word I use, because it's my experience, is flourish. My life flourishes. Receiving the light, becoming a lantern, lighting the path. Then you've heard it before. Trust God. Clean house. Help others. This is our way of life. But Bill put it more succinctly. Wow, the timing is perfect. Bill, I love it. Bill put it more succinctly, and this can be the carry away. Our way of living, head in the clouds, thinking in terms of steps 10, 11 as a package. Bill says that when they're integrated, inventory and meditation, it becomes so powerful in maintaining and sustaining our consciousness. Our head in the clouds, but our feet on the ground. Stay practical. Don't get too spiritual in the sense of any distance from humanity. We need to keep connected to our brothers and sisters. This is an adaptation of the 7-step prayer. An adaptation using current language with the format of the 7-step. And I'm inviting you to pray it with me. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, healthy and unhealthy. I pray that you now remove from me every single inclination and behavior that gets in the way of my usefulness to you and my helpfulness to others. Grant me wisdom, strength, courage, as I go out from here to do your will by trying to live in alignment with reality as it really is. Amen. All right.
We hope you enjoyed this recording. If you are interested in other speaker tapes or CDs from AA or Al-Anon, please contact us at Sound Solutions, toll free 1-877-893-2777, or visit us on the web at soundsolutionsrecording.com. We are also available to cover your recording and sound system needs. Thank you for allowing us to be of service and carrying the message.